Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kryptonized. We have a returning guest. I just love this guy, Mark Jeffrey, and he's here to talk about Solid. Now, I've done some analysis on it, but I haven't dove that deeply. But we're talking VR, we're talking NFTs, we're talking in token and crypto and all these big plans. So Mark is here to fill this in. I saw Mark looking at this particular project. It's not a very popular trading token. I think it's ranked number 8,228 on CoinMarketCap. But there's apparently some big plans that Mark can fill us in on. So, Mark, before we jump in, can you introduce yourself and then we'll get going?
Yeah, my name is Mark Jeffrey. I've been a serial entrepreneur for about 25 years. I've been in crypto since 2013, wrote a couple books on Bitcoin, and interviewed Vitalik Buterin right before the Ethereum ICO, so participated in that. So I've been doing DeFi for the last couple of years, pretty much full time.
Wait, every time I talk to you, there's something new. What do you mean you interviewed Vitalik? Why?
Yeah. Well, so I do podcasting, right? So not recently, but I have throughout most of my life. But anyway, I ran a podcast in 2014 called Bitcoin News Weekly. And we interviewed a lot of early people. Most of them didn't make it. But one of them that we interviewed was this weird little kid called Vitalik Buterin, and he had a weird little project called Ethereum. And it was before the Ethereum ICO. And, if you listen to the podcast is still up. If you listen to it, you can hear Vitalik trying to explain to me, you give me your Bitcoin, and then a year from now, maybe I'll give you this new token. And you can hear me kind of going, yeah, dude, I don't know if I really want to give you my precious Bitcoin for your, what's it called again? Ethereum, right? And luckily I did put some in. I wish I put a lot more in now in retrospect, but I did participate, so that was pretty cool.
And with us this week is Vitalik Buterin, the co-creator of Ethereum. Hello, Vitalik.
Hello.
Hello, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for, we've had some technical difficulties getting this going, so thank you so much for bearing with us. So tell us about Ethereum. Tell us what it is and what you released this week. Yeah,
so, there's a lot of different ways that I describe Ethereum to different people. One of the simpler ones that I actually used pretty successfully today is it's a blockchain with a programming language that controls money.
Right.
So you can basically create scripts, and those scripts can move currency units around automatically. You can write programs with whatever conditions you want. You could have.
Yeah, I speaking of which, I saw some old tweets about buying Ethereum and Bitcoin at like $8, and I'm just like, oh my god! If I had a time machine, that would have made all the difference in the world. But,
yeah.
Well, maybe today was Solid. This is a future time machine opportunity. And so I'd love for you to kind of give everyone kind of a foundation of what Solid is and why you either like it or don't like it.
Yeah, so Solid is a new project by Andre Cronje, who is well known in the DeFi space as being the guy who did Wi-Fi initially, and is also one of the primary developers on the Phantom blockchain. And what Solid is, it's basically a curve killer. So on the Ethereum blockchain, there's a protocol called Curve. It's effectively an AMM decentralized exchange. What's really unique about it is the giant amount of liquidity that it possesses. So it has the most amounts of any coin, specifically stable coins, and it has the AMM is configured in such a way that when you trade massive amounts of Tether for MIM, for example, normally if you tried to do that on Uniswap, you'd lose 3% of it or something stupid, right? So if you have $100 million, you don't want to lose $3 million, right? So, but if you do that same trade on Curve, you lose a very tiny percentage of it because it's architected to have very, very, very low slippage. So it has in effect become the Federal Reserve, of all DeFi. So all of the other exchanges are pulling a lot of their liquidity from Curve, right? So Curve has become the center of gravity for all things DeFi. So Andre took a look at this and basically said, really loved this. We've noticed he's been sort of infatuated with Curve for a long time. He said, I can do a better one. And so, and also I will do it on Phantom because Ethereum has a lot of problems with, slow transaction throughput as well as very, very high gas fees, right? So,
yeah.
And cost, right? So, Phantom, everything is super fast and super cheap because it's a re-architected Ethereum, and I won't get into that, but just, everything's super fast, super cheap. And so building the new Federal Reserve of DeFi, you want to do it on one of those chains. So he chose Phantom because, he helped build it. And so Solid, so he launched Solid last Thursday, and it immediately got up to about $2.3 billion worth of total value locked. So it has very quickly amassed Curve-like liquidity, although it's not. I forget where Curve is. I think they're up around 14 billion or something like that in aggregate across all chains. But it looks like it's on its way there. The other interesting thing that Andre did was he was a big admirer of Ohm, right? Which Time and Wonderland were based on. And the current narrative is that those things are a failure, that they all collapsed. But Andre had a different view, and I share this view, which is, no, actually they succeeded, but you have to look at them the right way. They're the first stage of a rocket. So, the first stage of a rocket, if it goes up and there's no second stage, it just plummets back down to Earth, and you go, oh, that was a failure. That's dumb. But if you have a second stage on that rocket, then the first stage gets you up into space, and you go to the moon and you come back. Now you're a hero and a great success. So that was how Andre viewed it. And
they claimed to have a second stage with Time in Wonderland, but they didn't execute it very well, I think, right?
Yeah, I think they ran out of, hilariously enough, I think they ran out of time. So they their first stage of their rocket had too many missteps in it, right? And I'm not going to get into it, but the last misstep was, of course, Sifu being a felon. And at that point, nobody believed them or would forgive them. So they lost the trust that they needed to launch that second stage. They may still recover. It's still in motion right now, oddly. So it remains to be seen where it will go ultimately. However, the one thing that was really interesting about both Wonderland and Time and Ohm was the 3-3 dynamic, right? Where basically if you take the token and you stake it in the protocol, you can make an insane amount of APY. And as long as everyone remains staked, everyone's value goes up a lot. But of course, ultimately, you have betrayers, right? Who instead of 3-3 are like me. And they decide to sell when everything's high and sort of crash the system. So Andre looked at that dynamic and said, well, for Solid, we're going to have a 3-3 dynamic. However, the way it will work is you will stake Solid in the system, and you have to commit to somewhere between a 1 year and a 4 year lockup. So that ties the betrayer's hands, right? So you lock up your Solid, you decide how long, and you receive an NFT in return. So you don't get an LP token, you get an NFT, right? Because all these things are very unique. And that NFT is sellable, but the actual Solid that is locked inside that NFT is not. So there's an ever decreasing supply of Solid on the market from that dynamic, right? So that we think will solve the 3-3 betrayer problem. So the other thing that's going on right now is when you lock your Solid inside of one of these NFTs, there is a certain amount of Solid that is produced every week. And we don't know the exact amount of that Solid just yet because there are conflicting sources of information, and everyone I've talked to is confused about this, and nobody has given us clarity on this. We do know that the total amount of Solid right now is 100 million. We know that there was initially 20 million Solid produced and locked in NFTs and sent to the top 20 protocols on the Phantom network, so that we could have voting occur for the very first time, right? You have locked Solid confers voting power. Apologies, I didn't tell you about that, which is very similar to Curve. In the Curve system, what's extremely valuable is the voting power that allows the people who have it to select which liquidity pools receive Curve tokens as rewards for staking liquidity. And having that power is like, if you have the amount of votes, you can turn the spigot in whatever way you want. And and so that creates liquidity for whatever token you want. That's extremely powerful, right? So that dynamic is an effect in Solid as well. Staked Solid confers voting power, and in return for that, you make Solid, right? Which is very much like the APY in Ohm or Time. It's a little bit different in that it's not as insane. It's not like 70,000%, and it effectively acts as an anti-dilution ratchet. So you as new Solid is produced, if you are staked, you are never diluted by that new Solid, right? So it's an anti-dilution ratchet, and it punishes anyone who doesn't stake Solid. So if you have liquid Solid, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but if you have liquid Solid, you get punished for that because you haven't staked it, right? So you're perpetually being diluted. Now, as I said, there were 100 million tokens to begin with. 20 million were staked and locked and handed out. There's another 80 million that are being handed out right now, but there's conflicting information about how fast. One source, Andre, his own documents say 2 million a week will be handed out to Solid stakers. But however, the code, when we all went and looked at the actual code, it says 20 million per week. So code would appear to be, the thing you should believe over documents. So if we're interpreting the code correctly, 20 million new Solid will be handed out to people this coming Thursday, because it's every Thursday, until the 80 million is depleted. So what happens after that? Well, the Solid protocol is allowed to mint up to 1 billion Solid. So, we don't know what the emission schedule will be after the initial 80 million are depleted, but that's where we are right now. So any questions about that so far?
What is your opinion of the opportunity here? Put on your analyst hat. We know you're not making any specific recommendations, but what does your analyst hat say, and are you buying it for yourself or not?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I've done, as I always do, right? I try to share whatever I can. So I did buy a bunch of Solid right when it came out. And I did stake it in the NFT. I went for the 4-year lockup, which is the longest amount of time.
Wow.
And yeah, because I think usually with Andre projects, the greatest benefit is front loaded. So I believe that by doing that, we know that 80 million Solid are about to be gushed out over, the next 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. So I want to collect as much of that as possible. Because this is one of the few times in history you'll be able to do that, I think. So I'm staked, locked, in collecting. The other thing I did was so there's another protocol built on top of Solid. Actually, let me go here first. So in the Ethereum universe, I've told you about Curve. Another protocol arose on top of Curve called Convex. Convex was another coin and protocol that sole aim was to gather as much Curve voting power as it could, and to control that and rehypothecate it through their own token. Which they did successfully. Convex now controls I think it's like 60% of the voting power on Curve at the moment. So it totally worked. And so, on the Phantom blockchain with Solid, there is a corresponding Convex-like protocol called SolidX. And they have a token, hilariously enough, called SEX. And so SEX is Convex effectively on top of Solid.
So SEX sells?
SEX does sell, yeah. And it currently controls 40% of the Solid voting power. So you can go to the SolidX website, and to earn SEX, you stake liquidity with them. Now, there are a number of ways to do it, but they offer very large rewards for staking liquidity with them, which they then turn around and stake in Solid, and they're able to do it, basically do a lot more, much more efficiently at scale than you can. And they take advantage of that, and they trickle down the rewards back to you. So I've taken some of my Phantom and Boo and supplied it in a liquidity pair on SolidX. It was originally at 700% APY. It's now around 450%. And it's earning Solid and SEX tokens. So pretty good. And it's earning at a pretty good clip. So I like that. There's another protocol called Weave, WEVE. And Andre handed out staked Solid to the 20 most popular protocols in DeFi on the Phantom ecosystem. And to do that, to qualify for that, you had to have the most total value locked, be in the top 20 of total value locked in all the Phantom ecosystem. We've managed to do that by creating a DAO where they just basically had a bunch of people gang up together and create a protocol together and create liquidity together. But it has a very, 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 very low market cap. So it was initially around $10 million. Most of these other protocols are like, $200 million to $1 billion in market cap. So the Weave token rehypothecates all of the solid voting power that they have, and they have a lot of it. So the idea is if you buy Weave while it's still a small cap, that will blow up because it's effectively rehypotheticated solid, right? So I bought a bunch of Weave, and that was another one. That was another way I participated.
Okay. Now, aren't you worried, Mark, that by locking it up for 4 years, that you've seen the innovation just in DeFi in the last 2 years? Imagine what's going to happen in the next 4, but you're locked up. So aren't you worried you're going to miss out on all these other projects?
Yeah. So if we've done the math right, I should very quickly make back all of the solid that I locked up. Like we're talking in less than a month. So I'll double it in less than a month. So I'll have new solid on hand easily. Plus, it'll just keep earning, right? So there's that. But the other thing is that the NFT itself is sellable, like a Bored Ape is sellable, right? It's just an NFT, and so it can be sold on any Phantom NFT site. Lastly, the SolidX site allows you to give them your NFT, and they will give you SEX tokens that they'll pay for it. So there are several ways out already. Yeah.
All right. Anything else about the Solid token that we haven't covered? Sounds like you're a pretty big advocate. It's the second stage in the rocket that you've described. I don't know how many stages it's going to be before we see just one breakout winner. But overall, you're pretty positive about it?
Yeah, because, the second stage, I am definitely very positive about it. Its market cap right now, even though it has 2.3 million locked in it, 2.3 billion locked in it, its market cap is only around 1 billion. So I think it's pretty severely undervalued at the moment. And if they succeed in their mission of becoming sort of this, new curve and new Federal Reserve of all DeFi, this is early days for it, right? So, and I do like, and you mentioned the second stage to the rocket. The Ohm token and the Time token had no second stage to the rocket, even though Wonderland had some plan, but they never executed on it. Solid comes with the second stage already built into it. Its second stage is voting power on the Federal Reserve of DeFi, right? So that's extremely valuable right there. It's not just a dead coin. It does something. And it does something super valuable.
Okay, and I'll give my quick analysis of it. Obviously, as you can see here on the screen, the token's been pretty solid, at least up until the date of filming here. Initial spike, and then it's kind of leveled off, but it's not too wild. The beta on it compared to other cryptos is pretty, it's close to 1, maybe 2. So it looks pretty solid out of the gate, but a lot of these experiments have, and then the shit hits the fan and something goes wrong. So we'll be following this, and Mark, please let me know if you've changed your mind on this. But you're locked in for 4 years, so you're not really ever going to change your mind. You're going to be always hoping for it.
As I said, I can get out. There are 3 ways out that I know of right now. So
yes.
And I want to add one last thing, too, because a lot of people don't know this.
Yeah.
It's on the Phantom chain, right? So if you go to DeFi Llama, that will show you the relative total value locked on all chains and, kind of where they all stack up against each other. Ethereum is on top at like 53% of market share. And next down from that is Terra. And then below that is Binance Smart Chain. And now the number 4 chain is Phantom. So it's been roaring up the charts, mostly because of Solid, all the total value locked and all the new activity coming to it because of Solid and SolidX.
What site is that people can go to and look at that?
Yeah, that is called DeFiLlama.com. So just spell it out as it sounds.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. All right, great. Well, Mark, always a pleasure to have you. Want to have you back the next time you find something like Solid, because we do like to report on the DeFi tokens. That's what this channel is all about. So again, thank you, Mark, and look forward to our next discussion.